You can have you.
Main event of the evening.
Ready to race to you.
These days are
Hello and welcome to These Days Are Ours, a Happy Days podcast. I'm Peter.
And I'm Joe.
And today we will be discussing Season 6, Episode 13, The Kissing Bandit.
Okay, Peter, tell us what happens in The Kissing Bandit.
We open at Arnold's, where Richie, Potsy, and Ralph's band is performing every day. Or Potsy and Ralph are, at least. Richie is AWOL, and his sax solo is coming up.
Hey, Mouth, where's Rich? The sax solo's coming up. Fake it, I'm playing the piano.
So they cut the song off early. An annoyed Al confronts them, and upon hearing they have no sax player, tries to fill in with a kazoo. Richie finally arrives, and Al, after some more playing, returns to the kitchen. As Ralph and Potsy try and press Richie into telling them why he's half an hour late, a pair of police officers show up and handcuff Richie. As they try and take him away, Fonzie shows up and demands an explanation, citing a law that requires them to tell the person being arrested the charges involved.
They do that? No, sir. They didn't tell me a thing.
Richie is being charged with breaking and entering, petty theft, and invasion of privacy because they believe Richie to be the Kissing Bandit. At the police station, Richie is part of a lineup of suspects. Mrs. Kowalski, the witness, identifies Richie as the one who kissed her.
I'll remember those burning lips the rest of my life.
Despite Richie insisting it wasn't him, the other suspects are allowed to leave, and after Richie calls his father to tell him what happened, Richie is interrogated. He admits his girlfriend's nickname for him is Sizzle Lips, which matches Mrs. Kowalski's description of burning lips. Then Richie is fingerprinted, has his mugshot taken, and is locked up despite protestations of innocence. Howard, Marion, and Joni all come down to the police station to pay Richie's bail. Joni finds the idea of Richie, who doesn't even kiss on the first date, being the Kissing Bandit, hilarious. As Howard finishes the paperwork, a confidence man tries to sell Marion a shady land deal.
Have you ever given thought to where you and your husband would like to spend your retirement years?
Mom, please, dear, we're talking retirement.
The waiting Cunninghams are joined by Ralph, Potsy, Al, and then Fonzie. Fonzie, just by being Fonzie, is able to speed up the process of Richie's release.
Cunningham, get out here.
I'm locked inside, Don.
Not for long.
Joni asks if Richie cried, and Richie says you can't let the other prisoners see you scared. So he hid his face in his pillow. Richie's not out of the woods yet, though. He's getting arraigned soon. Also, Marion tries to invite the other waiting people in the police station to come by the house sometime. The next day, a mob of girls have followed Richie home, love-struck because they think he's the Kissing Bandit.
Sure, you like me now. You think I'm the Kissing Bandit. Where were you when I needed you?
Richie is still adamant that he's not, and despite what the lawyer says, he refuses to cop a plea. Howard urges him to be pragmatic. Sometimes innocent people do get arrested. Marion brings up the time Mother Kelp was arrested at the border. There's a call on the phone. WOW radio wants to talk to the Kissing Bandit. Richie angrily makes kissing noises.
How's that, bucko?
And hangs up. Fonzie comes in, and even he's overwhelmed by the gaggle of girls outside, though he does offer to take them off of Richie's hands. He also shows everyone a newspaper article about Richie's arrest, and Richie's angry at the revelation that the manhunt has concluded, so they're not looking for the real guy. Joni suggests Richie jump bail. Howard goes to find a new lawyer, and Marion and Joni go to fix dinner. Fonzie tells Richie there's only one way to find the real Kissing Bandit: set a trap. And the bait?
Succulent lips.
That night, Howard, Marion, and Joni leave for the movies. Fonzie bought them tickets to 101 Dalmatians. Once they're gone, Richie comes downstairs in a blue dress and black wig. The succulent lips that will learn the real bandit are his.
My place, 10 o'clock, be there.
As Fonzie puts lipstick on Richie, he explains that the Kissing Bandit comes in through open windows and was last reported 4 blocks from the Cunningham residence. Fonzie says they'll do this every night until the bandit shows up. He also says Richie is cute as a button. Richie's not particularly good at acting sultry, though.
Think sultry, right? Roll our shoulders.
Yeah.
Looks like you're rowing a boat.
Hopefully the guy is nearsighted. They hear whistling from outside, and Fonzie turns the light off. Unfortunately, it's just Potsy and Ralph, the former not recognizing Richie and the latter immediately recognizing him.
That's Richie! Hey, Rich!
They make fun of Richie, though they did come by to help. Fonzie sends them upstairs to act as lookouts. Richie is furious, not just about the arrest in the first place, but now about having to act as bait. Fonzie tells him he's beautiful when he's angry. Later that night, as Richie's asleep on the couch, a man comes in through the open window and kisses the sleeping Richie, waking him up. Richie, in a Minnie Mouse-esque voice, asks if he's the Kissing Bandit.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Let's just savor the moment.
Oh, heavens to Betsy.
He identifies himself as someone spreading affection to lovelies. Ick. When Ralph and Potsy come downstairs, the bandit makes a break for it. The front door is blocked by the Cunninghams returning from the movies, and before he can leave through the kitchen, Richie, Potsy, and Ralph manage to chase him upstairs, then back downstairs. He grabs a vase to defend himself,
Watch it, he pulled a vase on us.
complaining that he tries to make lonely women feel better, and this is the thanks he gets. He boasts about how no one can get him, and then Fonzie grabs him from behind. As Richie happily declares he won't have to go to prison, the police, who were tipped off by Fonzie, arrive to arrest the real Kissing Bandit, who gets in one last smooch on Marion's cheek.
That's gonna cost you, fella! Marion, how could you?
After the police leave, Marion makes everyone hot cocoa. Sadly, she can't find the marshmallows, and Fonzie refuses to drink his cocoa without marshmallows. Richie says it's not that ridiculous that he could have been the Kissing Bandit.
I'm a heck of a kisser. These lips have seen plenty of action.
Then Joni finds the marshmallows, much to Fonzie's joy.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was The Kissing Bandit, which first aired back on November 28th, 1978. On that night, Happy Days was followed by a brand new Laverne and Shirley, in which the girls flashed back to the time when they first moved in together. CBS had a new episode of The Paper Chase in which James Hart falls in love with Professor Kingsfield's rebellious daughter. And NBC was airing the Oscar-winning 1970 movie Patton, with George C. Scott as World War II General George S. Patton.
This is Patton, a salute to a rebel. A man whom the New York Times described in an editorial 2 days after his death as a legend, deeply religious and violently profane.
So, Peter, of those three choices, what are you watching?
Maybe Patton.
Patton is a really cool film. I might watch the Paper Chase episode because it does follow the plot of the movie. So
Oh, wow.
that sounds kind of interesting. The Kissing Bandit was directed by Jerry Paris and it was written by Beverly Bloomberg. This was Beverly's first script credit for Happy Days, but she's already been credited as a story editor earlier this season. She'll be with Happy Days as a writer and story editor through season 10. She also worked on Welcome Back, Kotter, and Chico and the Man.
I got a job as an apprentice writer, and I was working for the Comac Company, which at that time was producing Chico and the Man, Welcome Back, Kotter, and 2 other shows. And my job, for the grand salary of $150 a week, was to try to insinuate myself into one of those show staffs.
She later became a novelist and penned a book called The Last Hollywood Romance. As for guest stars this week, let's start with Ray Girardin as Sergeant Ryan.
I'll tell you, Cunningham, that's some kid you got there.
Ray was an actor from Massachusetts who worked steadily from the late 60s to the late 90s in both TV and film. He had recurring roles on Charlie and Company and Thunder, but he was mainly a guest actor. His credits include Man from U.N.C.L.E., Barney Miller, Greatest American Hero, Benson, Dallas, Newhart, Beverly Hills 90210, and many more. He'll return to Happy Days in season 8, and Gary Marshall also used him on Mork and Mindy. His films include Hollywood Man and Skag. He died in 2019. So, Peter, what did you think of Ray Girardin as Sergeant Ryan?
He was perfectly serviceable as a cop.
That's the rave review of the year. I thought Ray was adequate in the role. I think he was very arrogant and overconfident and kind of a jerk. I guess our main guest star this week was Charlie Doherty as the Kissing Bandit. Charlie's been working in TV and film since the late 70s. His big screen credits include Slackers and the Kentucky Fried Movie.
Mrs. Burke, I thought you were Dale.
You know, people often mistake me for my teenage daughter, Dale.
His TV credits include Alf, Wings, Monk, Quantum Leap, Bones, The Middle, and even Bizaardvark with Jake Paul. Peter, what on earth did you think of Charlie Doherty as the Kissing Bandit?
He was very good at the role he was cast in. Slightly unassuming creep who is very good at justifying himself, to himself at least. I like that he does match Mrs. Kowalski's description of being innocent looking. He's got a kind of a nice face, which only serves to make him creepier, in my opinion. Did he look a little bit like Martin Short to you?
It's a very decent office. So often high ceilings can be effective.
To me, he actually looked most like Ralph.
Oh, huh.
So,
yeah, I could see that.
He has the red curly hair. He wears the flat cap. And I was wondering what this story would have been like with Ralph misidentified as the Kissing Bandit.
I don't think that Ralph would have hid his face when he cried in prison.
And I think we would have gotten like a whole sequence of Ralph in the jail cell. The Kissing Bandit seems like a guy who would constantly be inviting you to his improv shows on the weekend. He seemed just a little too delighted with himself at the end. I don't know how he's going to fare in the criminal justice system. We can talk a little bit about his charges. I don't think they're going to make breaking and entering stick as a charge because he's not actually opening the window or anything like that to get in. What they're probably going to get him on is criminal trespassing.
I probably should not have been as mildly surprised as I was that sexual assault was not an option here because it's the 1950s and probably nobody cares if people go around non-consensually kissing other people.
We also have Richard Rote as the con man. Richard is another one of those stalwart TV actors with tons of credits to his name. He's arguably best known for his work on soap operas like The Doctors, Generations, and Days of Our Lives, but he's been on dozens of shows from the early 1960s to the late 2000s: Hawaii Five-0, Columbo, Bob Newhart, Mary Tyler Moore, Hill Street Blues, Dynasty, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Blossom, Cold Case, 24, Seinfeld, Friends, and way too many more to mention. His movies include Westworld and Heart and Souls. What did you think of Richard Rote as the con man?
His role was small but fun. I like that he just bluntly tells Marion that, yeah, he's a confidence man, but she doesn't realize that confidence man equals con man.
I'm a confidence man.
Well, having confidence in yourself is very important.
She is written as so trusting and naive in this episode, and maybe that comes from Beverly Bloomberg, I don't know. I liked his character a lot. I liked that he was kind of a sophisticated gentleman con man. I kind of wanted a little bit more of Richard Rote as the con man, but I guess we were not destined to get any more.
He should have come back for another episode. An episode that was all about him.
Yeah, I wanted an episode about him actually selling some piece of real estate to the Cunninghams, and then the Cunninghams go to investigate it, and it's really run down or it doesn't exist, and then they come back after him. Our next guest star is a little controversial here. We have Mary Lynn Ross as Bubbles LaRue. Now, Mary is spelled M-E-R-R-I-E. Mary had a very colorful screen career in the 70s and 80s, including such memorable films as The Happy Hooker Goes to Washington, Bobby Joe and the Outlaw, Love at First Bite, Schoolgirls in Chains, The Lucifer Complex, and the all-time classic, Class of 1984 with Perry King.
Class of 1984. Their only goal is power.
I run this school, man.
Their only law is survival.
She also played Julie Nixon in a film called White House Madness in 1975. Since those days, Mary has been very busy writing books like Life is an Improv and Bounce Off the Walls, Land on Your Feet.
When you hit the wall like that, you're not even bouncing off the wall. You're actually hitting the wall.
I could not for the life of me find Mary Lynn Ross as Bubbles LaRue in this episode at all. How about you, Peter?
Nope. The best I can guess is that maybe she's one of the women in the police station waiting area. There is a part where Marion is telling the other people that they're all welcome to come by the Cunningham house for dinner sometimes. Two of them are very scantily clad women, and I'm wondering if there was like a cut scene where one of them had a larger role, and that was Bubbles.
That sounds very logical.
So, Mary Lynn, if you hear this, reach out to us and tell us where you are in this episode.
We also had Judy Carroll as Mrs. Kowalski, the lady witness. This was Judy's first role. She had a handful of TV credits in the late 70s and early 80s, including Chips, Lou Grant, The Fall Guy, and a mostly forgotten B. Arthur sitcom called Amanda's. What did you think of Judy Carroll as Mrs. Kowalski?
I don't like how complimentary she was to the Kissing Bandit's kissing skills, because the implication seems to be that, in that case, his breaking into her house and non-consensually kissing her was okay because he was good at it.
That is a weird subtext of that scene. I don't know, she seems half angry and half complimentary. It's hard to get a read on Mrs. Kowalski because she's there and gone so briefly. By the way, the actor playing Vernon, the drunk at the police station, is uncredited, but I got a couple of laughs out of his character. Anyway, Fonz knows him and says,
"Sit down, Vernon."
He must be some local character that everybody knows. As for songs this week, the big one is Every Day, performed by Anson Williams.
Every day, it's a getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster.
The original, recorded by Buddy Holly in 1957, features no sax solo. I guess they couldn't round up a Celesta for this episode of Happy Days. What did you think of their version of Every Day?
What I like about Buddy Holly's Every Day is that it's a very sweet, sincere song. It's just this sweet, bubbly song about unabashedly being in love with someone and falling more in love with them every day. And Anson Williams' performance feels weirdly smarmy.
That is exactly the adjective I would use to describe Anson's performance. He just smarms up this whole song like a Las Vegas lounge singer. Anson is not right for Buddy Holly songs. When Richie is being booked, we briefly hear the theme to the TV show Dragnet, composed by Walter Schumann. It's reprised later in the show when the Kissing Bandit is finally caught. In the syndicated version of the episode, however, the Dragnet theme has been removed for copyright reasons, and the song that they put in instead is like a ripoff of the Mission Impossible theme. Which makes no sense in context at all.
It really doesn't.
Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen is performed by Ron Howard.
Nobody knows the trouble I've seen.
This is an African-American spiritual that goes back to the days of slavery. It wasn't published until 1867 when it appeared in a book called Slave Songs of the United States. Since then, it's been covered by numerous gospel, jazz, and blues artists, including Louis Armstrong, and it's frequently been used in movies and TV shows, often when characters are imprisoned.
Nobody knows the trouble I've seen.
Have you ever seen a movie or TV show where the characters sing "Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen"?
Yes, it was the Emoji Movie. It was sung by a hand emoji who was played by James Corden.
Nobody knows the touchscreens I've seen.
For me, it was Spaceballs.
Nobody knows but Jesus.
That is objectively better.
As for cultural and historical references this week, the episode shares its title with a 1948 MGM musical starring Frank Sinatra.
I offer you these things that come from up above.
It was a critical and financial bust, one of the studio's least successful musicals ever. Fonzie refers to the local Penal Code 4, subsection 66A.
66A. What is that one? I forgot that.
It says that you have to tell the alleged perpetrator of his charges. Well, Happy Days has cited actual Wisconsin laws in the past. This particular code is entirely fictional. The Sixth Amendment guarantees you the right to be informed of the charges against you, but this does not mean that arresting officers have to tell you what you're being charged with. The landmark Miranda versus Arizona case, forcing police officers to inform arrestees of their rights, was not until 1966. Fonz sarcastically compares Richie to Jack the Ripper.
But what do you think? I got Jack the Ripper?
No.
This was an unidentified serial killer whose victims were mostly prostitutes in London's East End in the 1880s. He has 5 known victims, and his crime spree has been the source of much speculation.
You're a naughty one, Saucy Jack. You're a haughty one, Saucy Jack.
Potsy mentions Bigfoot kidnapping Richie. Bigfoot is a figure of American and Canadian folklore, also known as Sasquatch. He's a large ape-like creature said to inhabit the forests of North America. We've only been calling him Bigfoot since the late 1950s.
Huh.
The Eskimos call the subject of my story Bushman. The Colville Indians of upstate Washington call him Sasquatch. But right now, let's just call him Bigfoot.
The Cunninghams go to see Disney's 101 Dalmatians.
The humans have tried everything. Now it's up to us dogs.
Which was not released until January 25th, 1961. It's based on the novel The 101 Dalmatians by Dodie Smith, originally published in 1956, which in turn was originally serialized in Women's Day magazine as The Great Dog Robbery. And how much of the 101 Dalmatians franchise have you taken in?
I saw the original animated movie. I haven't read any of the books. I think I saw the Glenn Close live-action movie years ago. I don't remember much of it, but Glenn Close was very good.
Fonzie says he feels like Eddie Haskell. This is the classic sleazeball character played by Ken Osmond on the 1950s sitcom Leave It to Beaver.
You call me Mom?
Yes, Wally.
Good morning, Mrs. Cleaver. That's a very pretty dress.
Thank you.
Eddie was forever trying to lure his friend Wally Cleaver into mischief, but would blatantly lie to Wally's parents and to all adult authority figures in an attempt to flatter them. When Richie says,
"Why don't you come up and see me sometime?"
he is imitating actress, singer, and playwright Mae West, a major sex symbol of the Great Depression. In the 1933 film She Done Him Wrong, West actually says,
"Why don't you come up sometime, see me?"
to Cary Grant. Fonz tells Richie to impersonate Marilyn Monroe. We all know who Marilyn was. But what specifically was she doing in 1960? Well, she was 34 years old and still married, though not for much longer, to her third husband, playwright Arthur Miller. Marilyn's only movie that year was a musical comedy called Let's Make Love with Yves Montand. It was the second to last film she would complete in her lifetime. Back then, even though it turned a small profit, Let's Make Love was considered a box office disappointment.
Aww.
Yes, Marilyn is having a ball. Let's join her. Let's sing and laugh and make love together.
Other observations this week. We never really do find out why Richie was half an hour late to practice, or why he was acting so nervous and suspicious before he was arrested, or why he was dressed like the Kissing Bandit. A lot of unanswered questions. Peter, what do you think?
The flat cap he's wearing kind of reminds me of something a newsboy would wear, so I assume it's some kind of news-related thing. Maybe he was trying to secretly collect information for an article. Maybe he was just spying on people. We shall never know.
It was nice to see Daphne still acting as the band's drummer. Obviously, Scott Baio was not all the way back to Happy Days yet. The writers have not forgotten about Sweet Knees and Sizzle Lips. being Lori Beth and Richie's nicknames for each other. And I am still cultivating my list of Happy Days catchphrases. And I think I'm going to have to add Sweet Knees and Sizzle Lips to the list because they do say it quite a bit. And we finally get definitive on-screen proof that it is now the 1960s. Richie's mugshot is dated November 5th, 1960.
Time is kind of sort of moving forward in the Happy Days universe.
Even though last week was Thanksgiving, so time is actually moving backwards.
It's all very anachronistic. It's very experimental.
WOW Radio is mentioned. Richie briefly worked for WOW in Richie's Flip Side, so that was a nice bit of continuity. There's a set of red books in the hutch next to the front door in the Cunningham's living room. In the scene where Richie comes home from the lawyer, the books are first seen standing neatly in a row, then they fall over between shots without anyone touching them, and then they correct themselves by the end of the scene.
Obviously, this is a sign that the Cunningham house is haunted, and they have a very easily bored ghost who wants to cause trouble but doesn't want to be a bother.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
And similarly, the easy chair in the living room disappears during the sequence in which Richie and his pals trap the bandit. I think this is to give the bandit, Charlie Doherty, more room to run around. The chair is back by the end of the episode. Peter, were there any outstanding Happy Days fashions in this episode?
Well, of course, there's Richie and, by extension, the Kissing Bandit's flat cap, which I was very fond of.
It is a great look for Richie, the whole thing. I like the jacket, too, that kind of matches the cap.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have any other observations that you wanted to make about the Kissing Bandit?
So, Fonzie has a little black book of every unmarried woman in Milwaukee, and instead of calling any of them up to act as bait, his idea is to put Richie in drag.
This is clearly about fulfilling some dream of Fonzie's. This has nothing to do with trapping the Kissing Bandit at all.
Fonzie's working through some stuff.
So, Peter, I will ask that age-old, timeless question. Was this episode any good?
I have complicated feelings about this episode, in large part because the basic premise is kind of icky, and also something that we brought up back in the last episode where Richie was in drag all the way back in season 1, The Deadly Dares, is that media by cis-hets has a tendency to play gender nonconformity for laughs, especially if that gender nonconformity is a man in traditionally feminine clothing. That can be incredibly harmful to trans and gender nonconforming people because it creates this idea that we're somehow insincere, that we are deserving of mockery. So, yeah, that can be uncomfortable. I don't think that all drag in media by cis-hets is inherently bad, but it can be fraught, let's say.
One of the strange aspects of this episode is the Kissing Bandit himself, who's entering women's homes through the window and kissing them without permission. It's kind of portrayed as being cute or even a little bit romantic. It reminded me of an episode of The Flintstones called The Kissing Burglar.
Come back here, you creep!
That was that kissing burglar's wife.
If the burglar's wife was outside your house, the burglar must be close.
That's right. Step on it, Barney. Wilma's in danger.
All the women in town are kind of obsessed with the kissing burglar in the Flintstones episode. That's another aspect of the story that I think we would reconsider if this episode were being made in 2021. Purely as a half hour of TV, I think the Kissing Bandit is fine.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff in this episode. There's a lot of neat little jokes. If you can get past the ickiness of the premise, it can be kind of fun, if still kind of icky.
Fun but icky is a pretty good description of this episode. It's an agreeable half hour of television, probably one that people won't really remember for very long after they watch it. I would give it a tentative recommendation, I guess. If you don't have anything else better to do for that half hour of your life, sit down and watch The Kissing Bandit. So, Peter, how can people keep up with us and find out about all the wonderful things that we are doing?
Listeners can follow us on Twitter at Fonzie Podcast. They can follow me on Twitter at Peter Volfranc. That's PeterVulfranc.
And they can follow me on Twitter at Joe_A_Blevins. They can find this podcast online at TheseDaysAreOurs.libsyn.com. And they can email us with questions, comments, and concerns at TheseDaysAreOursPodcast@gmail.com. So, Peter, what do we have on the docket for next week?
Next week, The Magic Show. That's what the episode is called, because there is a magic show in it.
I'm very much looking forward to this episode. So, see you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.
The story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
How's that, bucko?